Okay, so we are back with another fall football preview. Today, we've got Foster Nicholas here talking to us about the Baylor Bears. Foster, how's it going today, my man?
It's going good. It's been an eventful couple of weeks. Training camp is over, so I think we're all just antsy for that kickoff type of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, football, it is literally right around the corner. So there's actually a football game this Saturday, a college football game. Can't believe it. Can't wait for it to get started. So let's talk little Baylor Bears here. First thing is, kind of give us a little overview after you mentioned the camp was over. Give us a little overview on camp or the program as a whole as camp ended and how people are feeling about it as of now.
I think from the team in particular, they feel like they're way improved. They feel like this team is miles ahead of where they were last season, and a majority of that is Dave Aranda being hands-on with the defense, being very intense. Players have mentioned punishments for maybe if a cornerback isn't able to cover a certain guy, and this wide receiver room feels like they're the best in the nation. So it's kind of been like that level of competition is almost a level above what you saw when the Bears won the Big 12 championship. So they feel like they're at that level, although predictions may not point it in their direction. And I think maybe the biggest red flag or green flag, you can take it either way, has been the quarterback battle, expecting DeQuan Finn to break out and just be the starting quarterback by trade coming in out of the transfer portal. And it wasn't until today on Monday when you hear that Finn is going to be the starting quarterback, and that's finally released. And that could either be Sawyer Robertson played really hard, or maybe you didn't know what you wanted to do with the offense in terms of, do you want your quarterback to run, and how much do you trust him to do that in this air raid style?
Gotcha. So you got a new starting quarterback. You also mentioned that the wide receivers believe that they're the best in the nation. Um, let's just talk about the strengths of this offense first off, offense and defense. We'll start with offense first. Is the wide receiver room the actual strength of the offense?
The wide receiver room is no doubt going to be the strength of this offense. Dave Aranda has said, and so have the cornerbacks and defense in particular, that the strength of the offense is speed. This wide receiver room has the talent and speed to be the fastest in the nation. You've got Monray Baldwin and Ashton Hawkins, who both made the Athletics Freaks list simply for their speed, and they're two of the fastest wide receivers in the brand new video game. So fans obviously expect that from them speed-wise. And then Ashton Hawkins, a guy I just mentioned, transferring in from Texas State, the cornerbacks have said that he's been unguardable. So has Dave Aranda. They just can't cover him in practice. And that's something when he was at Texas State, Baylor couldn't cover him there anyway. And now you've got
Right.
this guy on your team to play in the slot and really break through. And he's the guy who I think Baylor fans don't have their eye on right now, but really should. I think he has the talent to be the best receiver in that room, competing with Monray Baldwin, Hal Presley, Ketron Jackson. And then again, I think the health is going to be really important to that wide receiver room and offense in general. Jackson is currently dealing with an injury, but
Mhm.
I assume everyone should be at full strength. But this team does have the depth to get through that, just maybe not at the running back or offensive line positions.
Gotcha. And that was going to be a question. What are some of the pitfalls that might, stymie the offense a little bit? Because there seems to be a lot of expectations with the skill positions. And maybe overall as an offense, but is there any place for concerns that fans should be concerned about right now?
I think you got to look at the offensive line. They gave up 34 sacks last year. That's the most of any team in the Big 12. Texas played 2 more games than them and allowed 6 fewer sacks. So this
Right.
is an offensive line that needs a whole lot of help. You brought in 6 new players, 4 transfers, and 2 freshmen, and it's going to be a brand new look. You've got the same center, the same tackles, and now you're kind of looking for some preservation on the inside. But if the offensive line isn't where it needs to be, the running back room is really going to struggle. You've got Richard Reese and Dominic Richardson, who are kind of that elusive receiving type of back. And if you can't block for them, they can't be efficient. You're going to have to go with the sophomore Dawson Pendergrass. And I think that comes as a surprise because you have so much speed and talent in the running back room that it just won't be apparent if the offensive line isn't there week in and week out to consistently win the trenches. And I think that's still to be determined if they've really meshed and if they have everything all together. And I guess that also ties in to the quarterbacks, both Sawyer and DeQuan, wanting to scramble and wanting to get out of the pocket.
Right. Well, let's flip it over to the defensive side. What are some of the strengths that you see from a defensive standpoint, maybe a position group or player, the two? What are some of the strengths of the defense right now?
The secondary is going to be the biggest strength of the defense with Caden Jenkins and Carl Williams, the 2 star sophomores who have really come into their own. And then Baylor also just added a lot of seniors, Kendrick Simpkins, who's an incoming senior transfer, and the secondary has the talent to stop wide receivers. I think it's been concerning when Dave Aranda has said that the scrimmages have really favored the offense and that wide receiver unit. While that receiver unit is really good, it's a challenge for the cornerback room week in and week out. So that's something to keep an eye on. And then the other biggest, best position on the team would be middle linebacker. Keaton Thomas, an incoming JUCO transfer, everyone has had glowing reports on him since the spring, and he's a guy they sent to media days as a brand new player on this roster who's going to be a sophomore. He's someone to really keep your eye on. And then Matt Jones, who's the 6-year senior, leader of the defense, playing middle linebacker. Those two together should be really talented, but Matt Jones is another guy who's dealing with an injury right now that they hope to have back against Tarleton, but that could be a really big blow because that middle linebacker position is kind of the anchor of this defense.
Gotcha. Now, and you mentioned the secondary and the linebacker room. I'm assuming that the defensive line may be a place that a little bit of a concern right now. Not necessarily a pain point, but maybe a little bit of concern going into the season per se.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely talent in that room. Baylor's got a couple of really good defensive tackles in Cooper Lands and then Linus Noel, who just transferred in. And after every scrimmage, Dave Aranda has been sure to say Big E looked really good. And he has to be double teamed every time he's out there. But you still lost a couple of guys who went to the NFL last year off of that defensive line. And that was still a unit that was the bottom of the Big 12 in pass rush and sacks.
Right.
So it's going to be who steps up, who's ready to level up, and how much can a nose tackle or that interior defensive line really help you with pass pressure and run stopping. So I think that's something to keep your eye on. Trevin Mae, a Hawaiian right end, he looks really good. He's been someone who's going to top the depth charts as an edge rusher. And then Garmin Randolph, an outside linebacker, 7th-year senior, is someone else who has been said to really improve. But it's a lot of old guys. And if they haven't done it in the past years, it's kind of a hook on, can they really get it done this year?
Well, one of the things, it's always what helps out the secondary is a good pass rush. Well, that can work in reverse too, Foster. If you've got guys that can cover for another half second or a second, you can help some of these pass rushers be able to get there, if it takes them, again, another half second or second to do that. So it's got to work hand in hand. So doesn't sound like it's something that should be maybe not, I shouldn't say shouldn't be concerned, but it sounds like it's something that they can work on and work together hand in hand and make each other's life a little bit better. Moving forward from there, look, Baylor's had a couple of years that, that they're not used to, I should say. Baylor's been a good program over the last decade in the Big 12. Last 2 years, not so much. What is something, or is there a pinpoint game that you can say, okay, this is a game that if we win and play the way that we're supposed to play and are capable of playing, can we get this season going on the right track?
I think you look at the first 4 weeks. You've got Tarleton and Air Force at home in weeks 1 and 3, which are they're must-win games. They're games you should win. They're games that are on the schedule for you to feel confident. But then you've got 2 away games at Utah in week 2 and at Colorado in week 4. And I think generally when you look at the Baylor football schedule, there are 5 games at home that you think you can really win, and that would put you on the right track. But if you're able to squeak out 1 or 2 road wins early in the season, I think that turns you from Big 12 cellar dweller to potentially a sleeper contender in the conference.
Right.
And that's how Baylor feels. But if you start out 1 and 3 or 2 and 2 after those first couple of weeks, I think that's a really big blow because this team can beat Utah on the road and they can beat Colorado on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if Baylor football was 4 and 8 and if they're 8 and 4. But I think right now, with that early part of the season and not necessarily knowing how the defense looks at the moment, I think you have to lean towards a worse record unless they can get those road wins early.
Gotcha. And speaking of road wins and worse record, I guess the good or the one question that I would have for you is, let's just say it's on the other side. Let's say that we're leaning towards the 8 and 4 side of this. What does that look like? What does Baylor have to do in order to get to that 8 and 4 mark?
I think if they are 8 and 4, this air raid offense has been a complete success. That meaning though there are multiple wide receivers chasing down 850 receiving yard seasons. You've got someone who's in the talk for the Biletnikoff Award. Monterey Baldwin and Ashton Hawkins each said, I asked them what their personal goals were, and they said, it's a race in the wide receiver room for who's going to win the Biletnikoff. We think we can be that good. So I think if this team is good, it is going to be off the back of the receiving game and even some of the tight ends really stepping up there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, run stopping is going to be the most important. Baylor almost allowed 6 yards a carry last year, and that's simply unacceptable. And they've got the size to stop the run, but broken tackles was a huge issue. If you get in the backfield, you've got to bring them down. So I think on defense, it's just shoring up those really small, minute mistakes.
Gotcha. And then last question, and I'll get you out of here, Foster. Look, the elephant in the room, Dave Aranda, it may be his last chance to be able to save his job. Let's just put it out there. I think they got to have a good season for that to happen. What a good season is, in my opinion, I think if they can get to 6-6, I think he's going to be okay. I really believe that. I don't think he has to win the conference or 8-9 games to be able to stay there. I think just building back up, get to 6-6, get to a bowl game. I think that'll be enough. Having said that, you mentioned it at the top of this, that he's taken a hands-on approach to the defense. I'm guessing that Coach Aranda feels like, you know what, if I'm going down, we're going to go down doing things with me being really heavily involved in doing what I know best, and that's defensive football. Because, look, I don't care what anybody says. The guy's a mastermind when it comes to putting together a defense. He just is, just flat out. So I think, am I off base by saying, hey, I'm going to take control of this thing and we're going to do it? Not necessarily, because I think they probably always did it his way, but I think it's just more hands-on of his way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, he's the linebacker guru and the defensive genius who turned around Baylor, and now he's got to do it again. He got them the Big 12 championship, and now it's kind of like, where was that and where do you go? So when Gary Patterson came in as a consultant in the spring, he said it was because he really believes in this head coach. And he hasn't been the only high-profile guy saying that this guy has the chance to turn this program back around to where it was. And it's going to start on that defense. It's going to be producing linebackers like NFL caliber players he coached at LSU. That's what It has to start there, anchoring the defense, some zone looks, Jack Star, figuring out what works. And I agree with you, 6-6 is probably a baseline, but I'll also say with Baylor very competitive in NIL now, and the class that they're recruiting for 2025 that has a chance to be near the top of the Big 12, I think that also warrants some credit to him and also the assistants he's brought in, is that if you do go a 5-7, you can probably sell yourself on another year and saying that this class we're bringing in is officially what we need to get back to a winning team. So
Gotcha.
you still have to be competitive. There cannot be a blowout against Oklahoma State.
Right.
You cannot lose that last game of the year against Kansas. You've got to make, I think Hal Presley said it best. Last year, Aranda's motto was person over player. And he said, that's gone. And if you don't make plays, big things are changing. And Aranda has changed the mentality. He's changed everything he went by. He knows he has to win now. It is a make or break year. There's nothing short of that. He knows it, and I think that's why he is so hands-on with the defense.
Gotcha. So, well, Foster, I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, we've had you on several times. We appreciate every time that you've been on, and we'll bring you back as many times that we can get you back on and you have available for us. So we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always a ton of fun.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate it, guys.